The morning calm snapped in two when a helicopter's rotors thundered overhead. Our sleepy suburban street turned into a movie set in seconds. Neighbors poured onto their lawns with coffee mugs and pajama pants, phones raised to catch every second. And then came the shriek. Karen, our self-appointed HOA queen, stormed outside in a silk bathrobe, hair wild, eyes blazing. She screamed as thick chains cinched around her precious Lexus SUV, the one she wore like a crown and used like a weapon. With a slow, ridiculous elegance, the vehicle lifted off the pavement and hung there helplessly. Sunlight flashed off the windshield, blindingly bright, while gasps and cheers rolled through the crowd. My driveway was finally clear, and Karen's reign was about to collapse in spectacular fashion. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? When people ask what it's like living under an HOA, I tell them, picture a circus without clowns. Because around here, the neighbors are the clowns, and leading the parade is Karen, HOA president, self-proclaimed savior of the subdivision, part-time dictator with a clipboard. I'd lived in Maplehurst for over 15 years. Bought my place back when the neighborhood was simple. Kids on bikes, weekend barbecues, people who knew how to mind their own business. Then Karen moved in, and it was like the air got heavier. From day one, she strutted the sidewalks like she owned the asphalt. She barked at kids to stay off her grass, measured hedges with a ruler, and wrote violation notices like love letters to herself. We'd tangled before. She hated my rose bushes, said they were untamed and in violation of community aesthetics, untamed like they were wild lions instead of flowers. I told her, politely, my roses had been there longer than the HOA charter. She sneered and gave me her sacred mantra, rules are rules, except somehow the rules never applied to her. So imagine my delight when I woke up on a sunny Tuesday, stepped outside with my coffee, and found a gleaming white Lexus SUV parked sideways across my garage. Not at the curb, not on the street. No. She'd nosed it directly across my driveway, blocking both garage doors with the precision of someone who'd practiced. For a moment, I thought it was an accident. Then I saw the note tucked under my windshield wiper. Big block letters. Perhaps this will remind you that no one is above HOA compliance. Trim the roses or next time I'll have your car booted. HOA President Karen, I nearly spit coffee all over her hood. She'd parked her SUV in my driveway to punish me for not cutting flowers. Flowers. By mid-morning, the whole cul-de-sac had assembled. People walked their dogs a little too slowly. Teenagers perched on bikes filming, whispering like commentators. Oh man, one said. He's not letting that slide. I stepped outside calm as a monk, coffee still in hand. Karen, I called, loud enough for the peanut gallery. Mind moving your tank off my driveway? Across the street, her front door flew open. Out she marched with designer sunglasses, hair sprayed into a helmet, and a clipboard clutched like a judge's gavel. Excuse me, she snapped. This is a lawful immobilization of property. You've repeatedly refused to comply with HOA standards. Until you do, your access is revoked. I blinked. Revoked? Karen, this is my garage, my driveway, my property. She smirked. You signed the covenant when you moved in. The HOA has the right to enforce compliance measures. The crowd murmured. Neighbors bit their lips to keep from laughing. Karen wasn't joking. In her mind, she was judge, jury, and sheriff of Maplehurst. I set my coffee on the hood of her Lexus, very gently. She gasped like I'd committed a felony. Move it, I said, or I'll have it towed. Her smile curled into something villainous. Go ahead, she purred. I already called the towing company. They're under contract with us. They won't touch my car. Then she turned and strutted back inside, leaving her luxury SUV sprawled across my property like a throne in the middle of a battlefield. The neighbors buzzed. He's done for, someone whispered. She's gone too far, another muttered. Phones kept recording because apparently that's the world now. People watching other people's misery through a screen. I stared at the Lexus, polished to a shine, sitting there like a barricade. Then I looked at my roses, and the absurdity hit me in waves. I wasn't just blocked from my garage. I was being publicly punished like a kid who refused to clean his room. But I don't break easily. And when I do break, I don't shatter, I build. Plans, schemes, blueprints for poetic justice. That evening, as the sun sank and Karen's Lexus still squatted smugly across my garage, I understood it wasn't about flowers or community aesthetics. It was about power. She wanted the neighborhood to see she could crush anyone who crossed her. Fine. If power was the game, I was about to show her what happens when the wrong man decides to play. Because standing there under the streetlight, staring at her gleaming trophy of arrogance, an idea sparked. One that would take this feud to heights she never imagined. Literally. By day 2, the Lexus wasn't just a car. It was a monument, a shiny blockade that screamed, "I own you." Every time I stepped outside, there it was, 70 grand of smugness gleaming like Excalibur stuck in stone. Except nobody was pulling it out. Neighbors treated it like an attraction. Kids circled it on bikes, giggling and pointing. Joggers slowed to snap photos. One guy dragged out a lawn chair and sipped lemonade while narrating updates to passersby like it was a sporting event. Karen adored it. She pranced around in an oversized sun hat and a pink tracksuit, waving like she was hosting a neighborhood festival. "That's what happens when you don't follow the rules," she'd announce loudly. "I'm just maintaining order." Order. Sure. If order meant chaos wrapped in designer sunglasses. On the third morning, I caught her out front holding court with her clipboard, lecturing 3 unlucky homeowners about recycling bins not matching the HOA-approved pallet. All the while, her Lexus still straddled my driveway, casting a glossy shadow across my garage doors. I walked over, calm and collected, sarcasm dripping. "Morning, Karen. Just curious. How long are you planning to run this little garage blockade festival?" She didn't even look at me. "Until compliance is achieved," she said, scribbling. "Compliance," I repeated. "Karen, they're roses, not toxic waste. Roses." She turned and lowered her sunglasses with theatrical flair. Her eyes glittered with triumph. "Rules are rules. Until you cut them down to regulation height, you'll find your property access restricted." Phones tilted. Lenses zoomed. It wasn't a disagreement anymore. It was entertainment. I swear I could almost hear a live stream notification ping somewhere. I laughed, not a polite chuckle. A full, booming laugh that echoed down the cul-de-sac. "You're really proud of yourself, huh?" She sniffed. "Someone has to maintain standards. Otherwise Maplerist will look like..." She waved vaguely at my yard. "Like this." Gasps rippled. My lawn was immaculate, better than most on the block. This wasn't landscaping. This was Karen performing authority in front of an audience. But audiences remember the show, not the rules. That night, I watched from my porch as Karen sauntered out, patted the Lexus hood like it was a loyal guard dog, and murmured, loud enough for me to hear, "Good work today." Then she went inside, leaving it there like a sentry across my garage. I took a sip of bourbon, and the thought landed like lightning. She wasn't moving that car because she didn't want to. It was her victory flag. Fine, let her wave it. The higher she climbed on that tower of arrogance, the harder she'd fall when I kicked the supports out. The next morning, I called the police, not because I expected help, but because I wanted the punchline. The officer chuckled. "Sorry, sir. Sounds like a civil matter. We can't tow without a direct violation of city code." "Civil matter?" I muttered after hanging up. "HOA speak for you're on your own." So I called towing companies. Surprise, Karen had them all wrapped up. She'd arranged a community towing contract months earlier. They wouldn't touch her Lexus even if I offered triple. That's when it clicked. Karen truly believed she was untouchable. Fortress of contracts. Wall of rules. But I've never been a man who worships rulebooks, especially when they're rigged. When the game is fixed, you don't beg. You change the game. By day 5, gossip hit a fever pitch. The neighborhood hummed with it. People whispered about how I hadn't backed down and how Karen kept pushing, the tension thick enough to cut with hedge clippers. Even folks who hated my roses started rooting for me just to see her lose. Old Mr. Jenkins shuffled up while I checked my mail. He leaned in. "Son, I've lived here 30 years. Nobody stood up to that woman and lived to tell the tale. But I've got a feeling," he said, winking. "You might be the one." I smiled. "Don't worry, Mr. Jenkins. I've got a plan." And I did, because I had connections Karen didn't know about. Friends in high places. Or rather, friends who could fly high places. So I let the Lexus sit. Let Karen preen. Let her soak up her little burst of fame. Let her believe she'd won. Every night on my porch with bourbon, watching her smug shadow vanish behind her curtains, I planned. I mapped. I prepared. If she wanted to humiliate me publicly, I was going to return the favor on a scale so grand she'd never recover. If she could turn my driveway into her stage, I could turn her car into my prop. And soon, very soon, Maplerist was going to witness a show it would never forget. There's an old saying, never wrestle with pigs. You both get filthy, but the pig likes it. Karen was my pig, and she loved the mud. Unlike most folks in Maplerist, I wasn't scared of getting dirty. I'd built my life out of it, literally. My business was small-scale contracting and logistics. Dump trucks, forklifts, cranes. I had access. More importantly, I had friends who owed me favors. So on my porch, bourbon sweating in the evening heat, I sketched a plan to turn Karen's smug blockade into the biggest HOA scandal this side of the county line. First thought, hire a tow truck from out of state. Too risky. Karen's towing contracts were tighter than Fort Knox. Second thought, slash her tires. Tempting, very tempting, but petty and obvious. I wasn't going to stoop to vandalism. No, I wanted something poetic. Something unforgettable. Then I scrolled through old contacts and saw a name that made the whole world snap into focus. Rodney Roeder Alvarez, an old buddy from my contracting days. He ran a helicopter lifting service near the industrial yards. Heavy lift choppers that could snag shipping containers like they were toys. And the vision crystallized. Karen wanted to block my driveway? Fine. I'd make sure the whole neighborhood watched her beloved Lexus go airborne. But it couldn't be a reckless stunt. Karen was lawsuit happy, and I wasn't feeding her ammunition. So I did my homework. HOA charter, city ordinances, parking laws, nuisance statutes. Turns out parking across someone's driveway wasn't just rude, it was illegal. Her Lexus was trespassing on my property. And trespassing property can be removed by reasonable means. Was airlifting a car reasonable? Maybe not in most neighborhoods. But Maplerist had never met me. Still, I wanted cover. I ran it past a lawyer buddy over beers, no names, nothing formal. He smirked. If it's blocking your garage and you've got evidence, technically it's trespass. Just don't drop it on a freeway or something. I nodded. What about, say, a lawn? He lifted an eyebrow. If you have permission, it's your circus. Permission. That was the key. Because I knew Karen wasn't operating in a vacuum. Her biggest enabler was the mayor, Mayor Douglas Whitfield. Golf buddies with Karen, thick as thieves. Rumor said she donated generously to his last campaign. And he returned the favor by ignoring her creative HOA enforcement. So where better to deliver her beloved Lexus than his perfectly manicured front lawn? Poetic symmetry. Her weapon of control dumped like a spoiled child's toy at the feet of the man who'd let her run wild. I could already see it. Cameras flashing, neighbors cheering, Karen screaming. A scandal big enough to rattle Maplerist down to the foundation. All that was left was setting the trap. I called Rodney. Hey Roeder, I said. You still running the heavy lift service? You know it, he said. Pure machinery-loving enthusiasm. What do you need moved? I paused, savoring it. A car. Silence. Then laughter. A car, man? My birds carry steel beams. Not Toyotas. It's not a Toyota, I said. It's a Lexus. And it's parked illegally across my garage. His laughter died. Illegally? Yep. Photos, witnesses, the whole package. Question is, can you lift it without scratching the paint? I could hear his grin through the phone. Send me the address. I'll make it happen. We picked Saturday morning. Early enough that everyone would be awake. Late enough that people would still be in robes and slippers. Perfect audience. I didn't advertise, but I dropped careful hints to a few trusted neighbors. Maybe have your phones ready Saturday, I told Jenkins. His eyes lit up like Christmas. Meanwhile, I played it cool with Karen. Every time I saw her, I looked resigned, defeated, even let her enjoy her victory. One afternoon, she caught me staring at her Lexus and smirked. Getting used to the view? I shrugged. Guess so. You've got me beat, Karen. She beamed, accepting tribute. That's what happens when you fight the HOA. Oh, Karen, if only you knew. The night before, I barely slept. I sat at my kitchen table with maps and photos spread out, checking details. Rodney had the rigging ready, chains, straps, hooks, all industrial grade. We'd assessed risks and rehearsed on paper until it was airtight. By sunrise Saturday, I was buzzing. I poured coffee, stepped onto my porch, and looked at the Lexus gleaming in the early light. Soon it wouldn't be here. Soon it would be the centerpiece of the greatest HOA drama Maplerist had ever seen. And when it was over, Karen would learn a lesson she'd never forget. Don't start a war with a man who knows how to fly. Saturday mornings in Maplerist usually meant quiet lawns, fresh-cut grass, maybe kids pedaling before the heat. Not this Saturday. This Saturday, the cul-de-sac was about to host an event so outrageous people would still whisper about it years later at barbecues. And best of all, nobody, especially Karen, saw it coming. I played the part. Coffee in hand, robe tied loose, just another suburban dad. I strolled out to grab a newspaper even though I hadn't subscribed in years. Jenkins still tossed me his copy. I glanced at the Lexus with the defeated look I'd perfected. Karen spotted me across the street. She was outside sipping something she probably called a detox smoothie, though it looked like neon swamp water. Good morning, she called, sweet as poison, smug as a cat that ate the canary. Morning, I said, keeping my voice weary. Guess I'll mow around your car today. She laughed, sharp and grating. See? You're learning. Compliance doesn't have to be painful. If only she knew. Inside, everything was already rolling. Rodney had texted at 6:30. Bird warmed up. It's 9 o'clock. Weather clear. Good to fly. My heart thudded. 9 o'clock meant the neighborhood would be awake. Scrolling on porches with coffee. Primed for entertainment. Perfect. I kept my routine deliberately slow. Hosed my roses. Hummed an old tune. Waved at neighbors who gathered like birds on a wire. Jenkins caught my eye and gave a wink so dramatic it could have been seen from space. He knew. A few others knew, too. Just enough to make sure the crowd would be ready with cameras. Karen, meanwhile, doubled down. Around 8:15 she held an impromptu HOA sermon on her lawn. Clipboard in hand, she barked about recycling bins, garage paint colors, community standards. At one point she jabbed her pen toward me. And some people still refuse to take responsibility for their landscaping violations. But rest assured, the HOA board has ways of making sure everyone complies one way or another. Neighbors murmured. Some rolled their eyes. Others filmed. Karen mistook their silence for obedience and basked like a general before battle. I checked my watch. 8:52. Time. I slipped inside and called Rodney one last time. You good? Engine's hot, he said over the muffled roar of rotors. See you in 3 minutes. I stepped onto my porch again, acting casual, though the air felt electrically charged. Then it came, faint at first, thump, thump, thump. Heads turned. Dogs barked. Coffee mugs froze mid-sip. Karen frowned and shaded her eyes. What on earth? The sound swelled until even the most oblivious neighbor understood something big was coming. A heavy-lift helicopter crested the tree-line, blades chopping the air like war drums. Sunlight flashed off the windows. The downdraft made branches sway. Gasps rippled through the cul-de-sac. Phones shot up instantly. Oh my God! Is that... Someone whispered. Karen squinted, confused and offended, like a helicopter had dared intrude on her kingdom. This is a residential neighborhood, she screeched. Who allowed Then the chopper lowered and hovered directly over her Lexus. The roar turned deafening. Wind whipped across lawns, scattering papers, toppling a couple lawn chairs. Neighbors grabbed hats, hair, lattes. Karen staggered, robe snapping in the gusts. "What is this?" she shrieked. Rodney's crew dropped down like commandos, fast, precise. In seconds, industrial chains looped under the Lexus, hooked tight, double-checked. The crowd lost it, laughing, cheering, filming like their lives depended on it. Jenkins shouted over the noise, "It's happening! He's doing it!" Karen charged forward, shrieking at the riggers. "Stop! That's my car. I'm the HOA president. I demand you stop." Her words vanished into the rotor thunder. And then, slowly, impossibly, her Lexus rose. Tires lifted free. Chains clinked. Up it went until it dangled 10 feet above the pavement. Sunlight blazing off the windshield like a spotlight. The neighbors gasped, then erupted into applause. Karen dropped to her knees, clawing at empty air, screaming like she'd lost a child. "Put it down. You can't do this. This is illegal." But it wasn't. I had evidence. Witnesses. Documentation. Every second filmed her trespass, my removal. And as the helicopter climbed, carrying her Lexus higher and higher, the whole thing turned into pure cinematic glory. Kids shrieked. Adults laughed like they'd been released from a tyrant. I stood there on my porch in my robe, coffee in hand, watching Karen's empire literally fly away. The neighbors thought that was the finale. They assumed the Lexus was headed to an impound yard, maybe dumped in some empty lot. They had no idea where it was really going. Neither did Karen. Revenge stops being an idea and becomes real at a certain point. For me, it was the second Karen's Lexus left the pavement. One moment it was her smug blockade. The next it swung in the sky like a Christmas ornament under Rodney's helicopter. The downdraft flattened grass. Hats sailed. It nearly knocked Jenkins out of his lawn chair. Kids sprinted across lawns like it was the 4th of July. Adults stood frozen with phones raised, recording every insane second. And Karen was a full storm. Bathrobe flapping like a cape, hair whipping into a halo, face twisted between panic and rage. She sprinted under the hovering helicopter, arms windmilling, screaming until her voice cracked. "That's my car. Put it down. I am the HOA president." The irony was almost too perfect. For years she'd used that Lexus as intimidation on wheels. Now it hung above her helpless, a $70,000 puppet. Rodney's crew stayed calm. Hand signals, chain checks, professional, unbothered by Karen's banshee wail. To them it was another lift. To Maplerist it was theater. "Holy crap, it's actually happening," someone gasped. "She's losing her mind. Look at her face," another shouted. Karen dropped to her knees in the middle of the cul-de-sac, clutching at air as if she could drag the Lexus down by force of will. She shouted every threat in her book. Lawsuits, fines, police, city hall. None of it mattered. Even the neighbors who used to cower under her clipboard couldn't hold it in. They laughed. Loudly. One woman called, "Looks like your car is finally HOA compliant, Karen. It's off the street." The cul-de-sac exploded with laughter. Karen spun, face red, stabbing a finger at me. You're behind this. You'll pay for this." I lifted my coffee mug in a lazy salute. "Good morning, Karen." Her scream could have cracked windows. The helicopter began to bank. The Lexus rose, chrome flashing, drifting out over rooftops. People chased down the street with phones held high like paparazzi. But I stayed calm because, unlike them, I knew this was only Act 1. Karen stumbled after it, slippers slapping the pavement. "Bring it back. You can't take it. That's mine." It was almost tragic. Almost. The helicopter climbed above the neighborhood, the Lexus visible for blocks, an absurd floating symbol of her downfall. People with no stake in the drama stepped out, shielding their eyes. "What in God's name is going on?" "It's Karen's car," someone shouted. "They're airlifting her car." And just like that, the whole area joined in, sidewalks crowded, fingers pointing, laughter rolling. Rodney's voice crackled in my earpiece. We're secure. Chains are good. Heading to drop point. I smirked. Copy that. Make it memorable. Karen stood in the street shaking her fists at the sky, screaming my name like a furious dictator watching an empire crumble. Then the helicopter vanished toward the horizon. The crowd slowly dispersed, buzzing like they just witnessed the Super Bowl. People slapped my back, murmured legendary, shook their heads in disbelief. Jenkins leaned close, eyes sparkling. Son, you've done it. You've actually done it. I smiled. Oh, Jenkins, you haven't seen anything yet. Because the Lexus wasn't headed to an impound lot. It wasn't headed to a warehouse. It wasn't going back to Karen. It was headed somewhere poetic. Somewhere that would hit her harder than any fine or HOA hearing. Straight to the mayor's front lawn. Mayor Douglas Whitfield, the man who'd empowered Karen, backed her petty tyranny, and let her treat Maplerist like her personal kingdom. And when that helicopter set her Lexus down on his manicured grass in front of half the city's social elite, the fallout would be nuclear. I took a slow sip of coffee, savoring the quiet after the storm. Karen thought she'd seen humiliation. She hadn't. The helicopter's thumping faded, but the buzz in Maplerist only grew. Neighbors clustered, replaying videos, cackling at the sight of Karen's Lexus swinging in the air like a ridiculous ornament. Karen, meanwhile, was wrecked. She collapsed in the cul-de-sac. Robe twisted, hair a disaster, mascara smeared into dark streaks. She looked less like an HOA president and more like a washed-up soap opera villain. Even so, she still managed to rasp, "He'll pay for this. You'll all pay." If only she understood how far the spectacle was about to travel. Rodney and I hadn't chosen just any drop location. We wanted irony. We wanted justice. We wanted maximum exposure. Mayor Whitfield was a slick politician who wore golf shirts like armor and treated handshakes like currency. He and Karen were close. Campaign checks from her, blind eyes from him. Together they turned the HOA into a petty dictatorship. So Rodney's chopper thundered over the city with the Lexus swaying beneath it like a bizarre chandelier. Cars pulled over. Pedestrians pointed. People leaned out office windows filming. By the time they reached the mayor's gated estate, half the town already knew something insane was happening. Social media lit up. Helicopter carrying a car downtown? One post read, "What the heck is going on?" Another asked, paired with shaky footage of the Lexus dangling over Main Street. Then came the drop. Mayor Whitfield was hosting a weekend brunch on his lawn. A glossy who's who of city elites. Council members, donors, golf buddies, champagne clinking, a string quartet playing something delicate, until a shadow swept over the tables. Guests looked up, squinting. The helicopter descended, blades whipping tablecloths and sending napkins flying. The quartet scattered. Plates of eggs Benedict toppled. And above them, like judgment, hung Karen's gleaming white Lexus. Gasps, screams, chaos. Women clutched pearls. Men grabbed phones. Someone dropped a bottle of Dom Perignon into the grass. The mayor staggered forward, face drained. What is this?" he bellowed, his comb-over flapping in the wind. Rodney lowered the Lexus with surgical precision onto that perfect emerald lawn. It landed with a heavy thud, flattening a patch of grass worth more per square foot than some houses. Chains unclamped. Helicopter rose. And it was done. The Lexus sat there, absurd and regal, in the middle of the mayor's brunch like a chrome-plated message. Phones captured the mayor's horrified face and his guests scattering as the helicopter climbed away. Within minutes, the footage exploded online. Mayor's lawn Lexus started trending on Twitter. Memes multiplied faster than dandelions. Back in Maplerist, neighbors huddled around screens, jaws dropping as they realized the destination. Even Jenkins nearly launched his dentures. "On the mayor's lawn," he wheezed, laughing. "Boy, you've outdone yourself." Karen wasn't laughing. She staggered into her house, then reappeared with her phone pressed to her ear, screaming. "Mayor Whitfield, they stole my car. They put it on your—" She choked on the words. From what I heard later, the mayor didn't comfort her. He tore into her, how she'd embarrassed him in front of donors, dragged scandal to his doorstep. For once, Karen was on the receiving end of rage. By evening, news trucks rolled in. Local anchors stood outside the mayor's estate, solemn in front of looping helicopter footage. In an unprecedented act of suburban warfare, one reporter said gravely, a resident's vehicle was airlifted from a neighborhood driveway and deposited on the mayor's front lawn during a private brunch. The motives remain under investigation, but sources say the vehicle belonged to HOA President Karen Whitmore. They cut to Karen, red-faced and frantic, trying to spin it. This was an act of domestic terrorism, she shrieked. A personal attack on my leadership. No one bought it. Comments flooded in by the thousands. HOA Karen finally got what she deserved. Mayor's Lawn Lexus is the best story of 2025. Whoever planned this deserves a medal. By nightfall, the mayor issued a statement condemning Karen's reckless conduct. He fined her personally for the damage to his lawn, threatened further legal action, and quietly pulled support for her HOA antics. In one day, Karen went from queen bee to a national punchline. Her power base crumbled. Neighbors who used to shrink under her clipboard started mocking her openly. Kids rode by chanting Mayor's Lawn Lexus, like it was a nursery rhyme. I sat on my porch with bourbon, watching it unfold with the calm satisfaction of a man who played the long game and won. But the real victory wasn't the car, the lawn, or even the memes. It was that, finally, everyone saw Karen for what she was. Not a leader, not a protector. Just a bully in a bathrobe, undone by her own arrogance. The helicopter had flown her power away, and it wasn't coming back. The morning after the Mayor's Lawn Lexus incident, Maplerist felt lighter, like somebody cracked a window in a stuffy room. 4 years, Karen's shrill voice had been the neighborhood soundtrack. Lectures, threats disguised as reminders, the click of her shoes and the slap of her clipboard. That Sunday, silence. No pink tracksuit, no weaponized sunglasses, no Lexus. Instead, the cul-de-sac buzzed with something new. Laughter. Jenkins strolled past my roses, chuckling to himself. Teenagers biked lazy circles chanting Mayor's Lawn Lexus, like it was the hook to a summer anthem. Parents waved at me, some cautiously, some boldly, like I'd just slain a dragon. Karen tried to claw her way back. She called an emergency HOA meeting Monday night and strode in with hair lacquered stiff and pride held together with tape. But the room wasn't hers anymore. I sat in the back with a bottle of water, watching board members shift uncomfortably under her stare. We must restore order, she barked. She jabbed her pen toward me. That man is a menace to this community. He staged a terrorist stunt against my property and our mayor. No applause, no nods, just silence. Finally, a board member, a woman Karen used to bully over mailbox paint, spoke up. Karen, you parked your car across his driveway. Another voice followed. That's illegal. You brought this on yourself. The room murmured agreement. Karen's face flushed. She sputtered, scrambling for excuses, but the tide had turned. For the first time in her reign, the board voted against her. They stripped her presidency that night, leaving her standing alone with her clipboard, trembling like a dethroned monarch. By Tuesday, the mayor filed charges against her. Trespassing, public nuisance, property damage. He fined her thousands for the ruined lawn. The city attorney hinted at deeper investigations into HOA corruption. Suddenly Karen wasn't Maplerist's queen. She was its warning label, and I went back to living my life. I trimmed my roses when I felt like it, not when she demanded. I parked my truck in my own driveway without fear of another pink slip. I grilled burgers while neighbors waved instead of whispering. One evening, Jenkins joined me for a drink. He stared out at the cul-de-sac, still laughing under his breath. Never thought I'd see the day, he said. Karen taken down by a helicopter. I smiled. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, or in this case, ego with altitude. He clinked his glass against mine. Legendary. Truth is, as sweet as it wasn't really about humiliating Karen. It was about balance. About reminding bullies they don't win forever, no matter how loud they are, no matter how entitled. Karen never apologized. She sulked around for a while, avoiding eye contact, muttering about unfair treatment. Eventually, she sold the Lexus, probably couldn't stand looking at it after the memes. By the end of the year, she sold her house too. The day the moving truck pulled away, neighbors stood on their lawns and waved. Not with sadness, but relief. The air felt cleaner. The birds sounded louder. Maplerist was free. I stood by my roses with bourbon in hand and replayed it all. The chains, the rotor roar, Karen's scream as her Lexus lifted into the sky, the crowd's laughter when it landed on the mayor's lawn. Sometimes the best revenge isn't quiet. Sometimes it's loud enough to shake the whole neighborhood. And sometimes it even flies. If this whole saga taught me anything, it's that bullies thrive in silence. They count on people being too polite, too exhausted, or too afraid to push back. Karen ruled Maplerist for years because most of us just rolled our eyes, muttered under our breath, and paid the fines. She mistook silence for strength. But power built on fear is brittle. Shine a light on it, and the illusion collapses. That's what happened the day her Lexus flew over Maplerist and crash-landed. Metaphorically and literally, on the mayor's lawn. I'm not saying everyone should go rent a helicopter. I am saying don't let small tyrants decide how you live. Whether it's an HOA president, a boss, or a toxic person orbiting your life, you've got more tools than you think. Creativity, courage, and a little humor go a long way. In the end, standing up to bullies isn't about revenge. It's about dignity. So tell me, what's the worst HOA or neighborhood story you've ever witnessed? Drop it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this tale, hit subscribe, because trust me, there are plenty more HOA dramas to come.